Alright, welcome to Unit 3 Factoring. Here we go. Unit 3 will be error-free. Okay, here are your vocabulary words for this first part of the unit. Okay, in starting out with factoring, what I want to talk about first is how to multiply binomials together. First of all, it takes your distributive property. The first goes to the first, the outside goes to the outside, inside goes to the inside, and last times last, otherwise known as FOIL. 2x squared minus 14x plus 3x minus 21. Combine your like terms and you get 2x squared minus 11x minus 21. Number 2, hippity hoppity, distributive property. Distribute the first term to in the first binomial to all of the terms in the second binomial, and likewise with the second term. Three x squared minus 5x minus 12x plus 20. 3x squared minus 17x plus 20. The next thing I'd like to look at is how to factor out the greatest common factor. This is the first step that you want to take to factoring. It'll make your problems a lot more simple, it'll make them easier to solve, and in some cases it'll make them factorable. So the first thing you want to look for here is your greatest common factor. That is the number that shows up in all three terms. That is going to be 3x squared. What's left inside after you're finished is going to be 4x to the third minus 5x plus 3. Likewise here, your greatest common factor, 2x z to the third. What's left inside is xy minus 3z. Okay, for those of you who use the AC method, or first term times the last term, this four-term grouping is what you do in the center of your process. Okay, four-term grouping is grouping like terms, and it will help you also when we get to completing the square a little bit later in the unit. Put your parentheses around the first two terms, place your parentheses around the last two terms. Around each one of those you want to look for the greatest common factor. So in the first two terms the greatest common factor is x. What's left after you divide out the x is x plus 3. Likewise in the second one is a 4. Now I always like to put it at the end. You don't have to. You can put it at the beginning if you wish. I put a 4 here, and what's left inside is x plus 3. Just like in your AC method, these two terms match, okay? And what's left inside is one of your factor pairs, x plus 3. And what is on the outside is your second factor pair, x plus 4. All right, first two terms get a set of parentheses, last two terms get a set of parentheses. Okay, what comes out of the first is 3y. What's left inside is 4y minus 1. What comes out of the second one is 2, and what's left inside is still 4y minus 1. Group them, 3y plus 2 and 4y minus 1. Okay, starting off down here, we're kind of getting into our next form of problem solving here. So multiply those together, then factor these out. You'll see that they are basically inverse operations of each other. B squared plus 2b minus 6b minus 12. You can see here is your four-term grouping if you're working backwards. B squared minus 4b minus 12. So now you can see that the AC method breaks apart the middle term into those two separate pieces. All right, we're going to break that apart into its two separate pieces. The way that you do that is by asking yourself, what two factors of 12 add up to, or subtract to make 4. Okay? So over here off to the side, a good habit to get into is to write your factor pairs of 12. As soon as you repeat factor pairs, you know you are finished with your list. Okay, so now it's going to be b squared, split the middle term. That's going to be 2 and 6. So that is going to be negative positive 2b minus 6b minus 12. Now you can see how we're working backwards to our first stage. Put your parentheses around your groups. Okay, what comes out here is a b. What's left is b plus 2. Careful here. What comes out is a negative, and that's going to be negative 6. So what's left is b plus 2. And what comes out on the outside is negative 6. b plus 2 is your first factor pair, and b minus 6 is your second. Okay? Factoring trinomials. You're using this method right here, the AC method. For those of you who like the box method, I will go ahead and show that on one particular problem so you guys can get the idea. Remember, beginning with this, you must start by factoring out the greatest common factor. Notice there is a greatest common factor in question number 8, and that is the value x. What's left inside is x squared plus 2x minus 15. You're going to write all the factor pairs of 15, and that's 1 and 15, and 3 and 5. Remember, once you repeat factor pairs, you're finished. Okay? So that means that the way I get 3 and 5 is to add up to 2 is by using subtraction. Please do not forget about the x out in front. That is going to be x squared plus 5x minus 3x minus 15. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to leave this guy alone for just a second, and we're going to focus on the inside pairs. So it's going to be x squared plus 5x minus 3x minus 15, 4-term grouping. Factor out your greatest common factor of x, and that's going to be x plus 5 left on the inside. Then here, factor out your greatest common factor. Careful, it's a negative 3, and what's left inside is x plus 5. Now, please recall that we left the x off just a minute ago. Now we must put it back in there. It was the original number that we factored out. So it's going to be x times x plus 5 times x minus 3. Now for those of you who are really good at factoring, you notice that you don't have to do any of this work for this problem, because the two numbers that multiply together to make 15 and add up to 2 are 3 and 5. And the way that you get 2 from 3 and 5 is 5 minus 3. So you don't have to do all of this work if you're good at mental factoring. Now the reason we set up this problem is because we need to do that for this particular problem here. Okay? So I need to multiply the first term by the last term. That's why it's called the AC method. Remember, it's ax squared plus bx plus c. That's where you get the AC from. So that's 21. Write down your factor pairs. This is why it's so important to have 1 and 21 every single time, or any multiple of 1. Because in this particular problem, the answer is 1 and 21. So break them apart, and you get 3 x squared minus 1 plus 20, that's an x, minus 7. 4-term grouping. Factor out. What can you factor out of there? Nothing, just a x. 3x minus 1. What factors out here? That would be, oh, that's a 21, sorry. 21, not 20. Almost did it. Almost made a mistake. Caught myself. So that's going to be a 7. So that's going to be 3x minus 1 multiplied by 7. So your factors are x plus 7 and 3x minus 1. Down here, the same thing again. We're going to multiply the two numbers together on the ends. That's a times c, and we get 8. All of the factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Remember, once you repeat, you are done. Okay, so it's going to be 4x squared minus 1x minus 9x plus 2. 4-term grouping. Put your parentheses around the first two terms and the last two terms. Take out the greatest common factor. That's going to be x, and you get 4x minus 1. And careful here, that's a negative, and you've got to factor out your negative. What did I do wrong there? Again, messing myself up. That's an 8, not a 9. Negative 4. Huh. Almost did it again. All right, so back on track. That's going to be negative 2, not negative 4. That's going to be, let's get back again, negative 2, and what's left inside is 4x minus 1. So your factor pairs are x minus 2 and 4x minus 1. Okay? Beginning of class tomorrow, we are going to discuss questions number 11, 12, and 13. So please factor them out and be prepared to discuss how you found your answers to those 3 problems.